Did you know that the average family spends less than 30 minutes of meaningful time together each day? That statistic shocked me. But when I think about how our full schedules are between kids, sports practice, school events, work obligations, and just trying to keep everything together, it makes it all make sense. Relationships, whether with our families, our friends, or often ourselves and others, can be one of the biggest blessings in our lives and sometimes one of the biggest distractions. But here's the thing. God created relationships for a purpose. He designed them to reflect His love, to bring us closer to Him, and to build a community that encourages and strengthens our faith. So what happens when the very relationships God blessed us with begin to pull us away from Him? In today's episode, we're going to tackle that question head on. We'll talk about how even the good things in life, like raising kids, nurturing our marriages, and staying active in our communities, can become distractions from our relationship with God if we're not careful to keep Him at the center. But don't worry, this isn't about feeling guilty for being busy. It's about learning how to refocus and realign these blessings in a way that honors God and brings peace to our daily lives. And I'm thrilled to have Amy Tate with us today. Amy brings years of experience working with families through church ministry, and she knows firsthand what it's like to juggle a busy life. As someone who has navigated the unique dynamics of her big, blended family, she's here to share her insight on how to prioritize God in the middle of it all and remind us of the beauty and purpose God places on relationships. Hey guys, we are so excited that you're here today. Really, I'm thrilled that you're here and that our guest is here. This week is a part of our Driven to Distraction series, and today is called From Chaos to Calm. And we have a good friend of mine, also one of our board members to Stepping Forward Ministries, Amy Tate, and she has joined us in the past. She was on a past episode last fall in our Next Step series. She was a panel member and did a fantastic job, so we had to have her back. So here she is. Let me introduce you to Amy Tate.
Hi. Thanks for having me come back again.
I am so excited. So Amy, for those who didn't watch that episode or who are new to us, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I currently work as an intake coordinator at a counseling office, and so I help people get help with mental health. Previously, I worked as the preschool ministry director at the Met. And I've done ministry for many years without pay as a volunteer.
And with pay.
Yeah.
And with pay.
And I do a lot of speaking and advocacy for adoption, foster care. And I have 4 adopted children and 3 biological children. And so I have a big family, 7 kids. 6 of them still at home and a husband. And so it's kind of perfect for what we're talking about and how relationships can be distractions.
Yes, because like us, we have a big family now. You outdo us in number, but you understand this concept very, very well. And you also understand that God has blessed us with many, many things, right? Mm-hmm. And among those are friends, family, and our community. And it's easy to see how these relationships can fill our lives with such joy and such purpose. Mm-hmm. But like we've said in previous episodes, even good things can become distractions if we're not careful.
Absolutely.
So we're going to start today by unpacking what it means for these relationships and responsibilities to shift from blessings to barriers in our walk with God. So we're going to start by defining relational distractions. And before we get into it, I want to tell you this, Amy. So when I was arranging all of the episodes, and I wanted to put them in an order that was like correct, like a good flowing order. Mm-hmm. And so I just looked to see, because when I was looking at this particular episode, I thought, well, to me, family is really important. So I think it would be higher on my list. Like I wanted to do the top ones and roll down. Mm-hmm. And so I searched it. And it's not even in the top 5 of the main distractions.
Right.
And I found out why when I kept digging, and that statistically, on average, human beings spend 30 minutes a day with intentional family and relationship.
That's sad.
So then it clicked. Well, how could it be higher on the list when statistics say that social media is 2.3 hours of my day, work is 9 hours of my day. So I literally give my family and my friends 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's not in the top 5.
A lot of the other things, your time at work and your time with your family, social media is probably higher because it's mixing into all of that time as well.
So relational distractions occur in any of our relationships, right? Whether it's with our husbands or our wives, our kids, extended family, friends, or even like our social circles. And I mean that like community as well when I say community. And so when these start to demand so much time and so much energy, they begin to overshadow our relationship with God. And it doesn't mean that these relationships are bad.
Right.
I'm not trying to say that relationship is bad. In fact, I am absolutely saying they are a blessing from God. We see that from the very beginning. We see that all through the Bible. We see it in the 10 Commandments, honor your mother and your father. So
the second greatest commandment.
Yeah. So they are definitely a blessing from God. But it seems like when we humans get a hold of God's blessings, we have a tendency to let the things that were clearly said in the beginning of Genesis that we were to rule over things, we let them rule over us.
Yeah.
And in fact, this one takes a huge priority over our walk with God.
Yeah.
And then it begins to pull us away from hearing God's voice, from the calling, because we just get wrapped up in the good stuff. Like, I know my kids are good things.
Yeah. They are.
So what are your thoughts, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, it's our sin nature is to be drawn to sin. We're a slave to it. The Bible tells us we're a slave to sin. And so I think it's natural to get distracted and drawn to those things and not keep God first. It's something we have to do very intentionally because our brains are just wired to do that. But thankfully, the Holy Spirit comes in and helps us to have a new pattern and to follow a different path. And so we just have to make sure that we're having that time with God so that we have that undistracted relationship with Him, and then it causes all of our other relationships to be healthy as well. So
yes, absolutely. So I think about it this way. When we're overcommitted with like social obligations, marriage and family and just other, I guess you'd have like your social obligations and your family obligations. Or if I'm trying to fulfill emotional needs through relationships, then I tend to put God on the back burner.
Right.
I think it's an area where I'm like, oh, I got this. I know how to mom. I know how to wife. I know how to friend. So I really don't need, I don't really need the extra support, Lord. Let's save that for like when I have a meltdown next week or the pipes bust and then I need you.
Right.
I think it's so easy to get caught up in what we can touch, feel, see.
Yeah.
Taste, the things that are in our hands right here, that it's easy for God just to like fly back and fall back.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, like the time spent in what I would say soul training, right? We've talked about that before, like prayer, Bible study, church, and not just limited to those, but those are going to be the ones that are most often referred to. They become a nice to have instead of a must have.
Right.
And then these distractions lead us to find our identity in other people and things, which we're going to talk about later. And we forget again that our identity is not found in these things and these people, even though they're good. It's found in God, which brings us to an important truth that we need to remember from the Bible, which is in Matthew 6:33, where it says, Jesus tells us, but seek ye the kingdom of God first and His righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you. So that seek first is key.
Right.
Like He didn't say, now seek me fifth and we'll work it out. Or seek your kids first and then come and let's do this thing. He says, seek first God's kingdom.
Right.
And I believe that when we place our relationships in the proper place, second to God, then we start to experience more peace, more joy, and purpose in the way that we can achieve by putting those things first.
Correct. I think it's a good example is tithing. We're supposed to give our first fruits to God, the first 10%, and then the blessing of God is on the other 90% of our finances. And it's the same with time. we should give God the first fruits of our time, give him the first moments of our day, and then allow him to fill us so that the rest of our day is then blessed. And that's in the forefront of our mind. We handle things differently. We respond differently. It just kind of sets the tone for the rest of our time.
So one could say that throughout the Bible, God constantly refers to all things that he's asking of us to be first.
Correct.
Because you're saying money's first, and he's saying here, put me first. And so so I'm just thinking about this in the moment. Doesn't that put the weight on God to have to accomplish everything else? If you bring him to the conversation, to the problem, to the relationship, it's like a covering. Isn't that what tithing was back in like the Old Testament? Was like the covering. For your
absolutely.
They believed for everything else, and I mean that's a whole other topic for a whole other day.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, putting God first is the key to managing relationships.
Absolutely.
Of all kind. That's healthy relationships. That's even toxic relationships, which we're not going to get into toxic relationships today, but it is the key because we were not created or made to be able to do this stuff on our own.
No.
Even though like my A-type personality says I can, it cannot. So Amy, you have a lot of experience in working with families. Like you said, from adoptive families. I know in your church role, you taught some different classes on how to help build in families and help parents. So how do you see this dynamic play out in real life? Like particularly when we talk about families, like what would you say to someone if they came to you in one of the times you were teaching or mentoring that said, hey, I feel like my relationships are unintentionally pulling me away from God?
Yeah. We taught a class last year based on the book Family Discipleship by Matt Chandler and Adam Griffin. And so we talked a lot about that. And one of the practical things that it said was to create a family mission statement, have your kids and your husband or your wife involved so that everybody has ownership. Everyone gets to come up with what does our family want. And you need to parent with the end goal in mind. Is your end goal for them to have good grades or make a lot of money or have a career? Or is it for them to know Christ and for salvation and for them? And so from that, you can put boundaries in place and expectations. Things like sports and extracurriculars get in the way a lot. And so having that family statement, mission statement, helps keep that end goal in mind and helps with making decisions of, is this helping our family or is this going to hinder our family?
Yeah, that's good. I've what's funny about that is like when you have a nonprofit or a business, that's the first thing you do.
Right.
I don't think we've ever done that in our family.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And my family that's the gifts God's given me. But yet in the other things, like that's a priority is to have that. We're going to circle back to that thought in a little while because I think that's really important. So then how relationally do distractions manifest? So let's talk about what does this look like on a practical everyday, right? So I have a few examples here. So, and I'm going to put a warning on this that the thought that I have next may not be popular opinion. Like you may totally disagree. You may say she's crazy. You might even be upset with it. But I'm not telling you that it's right for you. I am speaking on like my own conviction and what God showed me, and just frustrations I've seen and thoughts I've had because I am not perfect. I'm also human. So I'm going to go ahead and open the door for that. So we're going to start with the best example, which is family and parenting. And Amy just talked a little bit about this. I feel like as parents, that especially parents, that we fall into the trap of overscheduling our kids' lives with sports, extracurricular activities, or other obligations. And I'm not saying these aren't great opportunities. Again, I want you to really hear me out through this. They are, but they can also leave little room for God's presence in the home and what you're teaching your kids. And we might find ourselves too busy for things like a family devotion. I can check that on mine. We are really bad about that. Attending church, whether that's on a Sunday or a Wednesday, or even just sitting down to talk about what's happening in their lives and using those moments to say, well, teachable moments. Like, well, how does God tell us to handle that? I think we do that a lot at Advent in our house because we're so focused on that topic.
Right.
And I've seen my kids really have, maybe my little kids have really good discussion and thoughts about something that happened and how in their little brains, what does that mean in the light of this right here?
Right.
And so here's the deal. I'm just going to tell you how our family does it and why. So we also have a lot of children, and they're also young and at home. I think our kids are a little younger than Amy's, but we still have a whole gaggle of kids. And so I found ourselves, because of age spans, early on, not really having a lot of that pool. We actually had more church pool than we had extracurricular. Yeah. But then guess what? Kids get older. And so it got to where we had another kid. And so now this kid wanted to do this and that kid wanted to do that. And they want to do them at the same time. And I've watched for years because, I have a 26-year-old. So I've been sitting in parent circles for a long time. So I've watched for years parents drop one kid off, run to another kid, or have a husband or a sitter stay with one kid while they ran 3 more kids. And I was just like, I'm never going to do that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss what my kid's doing. I really, I don't want to put that on somebody else. It's bad enough if I have to miss it and my husband has to take over, or if he didn't come or whatever. Right. So I just kind of had in my head that I don't ever want to do that. But then I started seeing more and more parents who, in conversation that were like friends of ours, I would say, hey, is your kid so-and-so going to be, I'm going to Wednesday night church. They're doing this really great. Oh no, we have this. Or we have that. We can't. We signed them up, and it's just part of it. They have to go. We have to sacrifice it. And at first, it just hit me kind of weird, and I thought, huh. And then it started bothering me.
Yeah.
And so, and the bothering part is probably not even my business, if we're being honest. But then I started paying attention to how many parents said it, and God forbid they asked me what I thought about it. Yeah. I would gently be like, well, in our house, this is what we do, which leads me to this. This is what we do. Our kids are not allowed to play. Well, they can play a sport. That's not a problem. First off, one kid gets fall, one kid gets spring. And the older kid gets the fall because he was already he was here first and he was already in that sport. And so that is his season. We all go together as a family. We watch, we handle practice, whatever. The other kid gets spring, whether you want to go or not, we all go. And because the ages of the last 3 are similar, and because we participate in sports that are not league formed, they usually have age spans for all of them. So we're all there together. The practices are at the same time. The games are either right behind each other. We don't have to run back and forth.
Right.
And so it has caused conflict with some of our kids when they wanted to play something different. Like, oh, now I want to play this. And we've been like, no.
Yeah.
We already assigned it to this kid. So, but you like these sports and this is what you've been playing. And so even if our kids play a sport, and if there's a practice on a Sunday or a game on a Sunday or a practice on a Wednesday, I tell the coach straight up they won't be there.
Yeah, we don't do that either.
And I ask, like, are they going to be penalized for it? Because before we even get started, I'm like, are you going to penalize? Like, are they going to have to do something extra? Are you going to make them not play? And if they give a yes, then we won't play the sport.
Yeah, we don't do that either. That's a hard and fast rule in our house as well. And we limit what they can do and how many as well, because it's more important to prioritize your family time. And I mean, in reality, are they going to end up in the NBA or the NFL?
Probably not.
But I really hope that they end up in heaven.
Amen.
And so I just think it's important to teach them that from a young age, that you should be pointing them to Jesus and not success in this life. I mean, I want them to have success in this life. I want them.
Yeah, and if they end up in one of those.
Yeah, great.
Then more great.
Right.
But when they end up there, don't you want them to have a good foundation to be able to, like, wherever your kids end up, if they are not foundationally stable, then the world is going to toss them here, there, and everywhere. And they're going to chase money and success and female or males because they don't know who they are foundationally. And I think that's important. I know a lot of parents are like, Wednesday night, not a big deal. It is a big deal.
It is.
When the largest percent of time, which is true for parents who put their kids in school, not homeschool, because that's a little different. or with people who are of the secular world, children who come from lots of different backgrounds. As an educator, I've seen it. Not every kid that rolls in there has a happy home.
No.
They come and they bring that with them. And so you're, as a parent, you're constantly battling, explaining why this is not okay, why that's not good. Here's how we could handle this differently. So if I can't take an evening and a day for church to supplement what we're trying to teach at home, and I cram it with something else, where are they getting that?
Right.
Because if I'm only spending 30 minutes a day with them, how much of that? Are we having Bible study all 30 minutes of that day?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. Well, and you're setting your kids up, you're discipling them. And that's part of our charge as parents from God, is to disciple our children, to disciple our families. And we focus a lot on discipling other people in our small group or at church when we're serving, but we forget to disciple our children. And so you're really setting the tone and teaching them and creating that habit for them to continue on doing that when they're an adult or when they're a kid. Or if you're teaching them, oh, it's only Wednesday night, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's fine to skip once in a while. I once heard years ago, what you do in moderation, your kids will do in excess. And if you're teaching them, even if it's once in a while, that it's okay, then they're going to take it further.
Yeah.
So
I've seen with my kids recently, my husband started traveling a little more. And of course it always falls on a Wednesday. And I just guess this is just spiritual warfare. It seems like Wednesdays are just always chaotic days. And so there was a time or two, maybe at the end of last year, where I was just like, I can't take y'all tonight. There's no way. Like, this kid is crying and whining, is sick, doesn't feel well, needs to go to bed. There's nobody else to pick you up. And both of my older kids were like, we thought you said this is a must.
Right.
And I was like,
right. And that's usually the day that you need to be there the most.
They called me on it.
There's something really good waiting for them, and that the enemy doesn't want them to be there to hear.
They called me out big time. Right. But it still, you know what it did to me? My kids gave me a really valuable lesson, because it stuck with me. And all the Wednesdays after that, for the rest of the year, I was very intentional on how I aligned my time.
Yeah. And
because I really, didn't want to be called out by my kids again, but I saw that they had placed a value in their life on it. And that if I had a choice to make, was I going to go against what I taught them, or was I going to align with them?
Yeah.
And so it didn't matter what the day looked like. I changed how quick I had dinner ready. Like I just, especially if Jeremy was traveling, that was the problem. I had to make a course change because my husband's course changed, which changed our whole. Did I tell y'all I was a type A personality? So anyway, but that's just an example of when you're pouring into them and then you pull back, even unintentionally. It wasn't a bad thing. I just needed that night to redo. Right. But they showed me the foundation. Yeah. And that was huge.
And it's impacting them.
Absolutely.
They recognize, like, wait, we don't do this. So.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like,
they get it. They know, and they know if you say it's okay or if it's not a big deal. And
yeah. And let me tell you, Amy and I, neither one of us are saying we're perfect at this or the things we're about to talk about. Matter of fact, I could use a lot of work in several of these, all the areas. Yeah. There's a lot of work. I constantly have to work because I think our natural sin nature is to turn to self, me, I. And sometimes I feel like I need this, or me doesn't want to do that. And so I'm tired at the end of the day. Sometimes I just don't want to do anything else. And I have to go against the grain and push through. And that's okay. Yeah. Nobody's doing this perfect.
No.
And if you are, please reach out to me, because I need you as a mentor in my life.
I always like to say they're all going to end up in counseling. It's just a matter of how much.
And yeah, I tell my kids, don't think you're going to take that to a counselor. I'm writing that one down, that you don't get that one. So to shift from that is marriage, right? Mm-hmm. Because, and for those of you who are not married, you don't get to tune out on this because you could possibly be married soon. So just listen and put this as nuggets and tools.
Well, it all really is for all relationships, but
married, boyfriend, whatever, right? So in marriage, or in relationship of woman and man, we'll say that because, again, people may not be married, but you're dating someone. Mm-hmm. It is very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day duties of housing and life, right? So working, taking care of the house, managing kids, that we forget to nurture our relationship with our spouse and, more importantly, our relationship with God. So whereas a minute ago we were talking about our kids and their activities, so that was like putting them at the front of everything. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that in marriage relationships, kids often hold out that top relationship over spouse, over God.
Yeah.
And I have seen from being a counselor how that damage happens when your kids leave.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reason we have the divorce rates that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Priorities are out of
absolutely.
alignment.
And so I know like this season of mine and Jeremy's relationship, we are way healthier than we've been in the past, like especially in our early marriage, way healthier. But we also have to constantly, like I have to constantly remember that he's not number one.
Right.
He's number two. And then I have to remember he is number two. He's not number three, because sometimes the kids like level up and then I have to level them back down.
They're loud.
And it's hard. Well, it's hard because they, they're cute and everything. I mean, there's still stuff with kids, but they're fun and this, but marriage sometimes is not fun. Sometimes I really love my husband, but I just don't really like him.
Right.
And it's easy to like shift that into my kids and be like, well, I'll hear. And so that is something I have to work on all the time, is keeping my marriage above my kids, but below my God.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle.
It is. It's really hard. And I have a great marriage. I have a great husband, but it's very hard not to put him above God often and have the focus be on that of what. Well, I think a lot of the time we look to that person as, what can they do for me? They're going to make me happy. They're going to make me complete. Which that's putting expectations on a person that they can't meet.
Ever.
And they won't. They'll fail every time. It needs to be God. And then that relationship too, we just did a book, You and Me Forever, Marriage in the Light of Eternity by Francis Chan. And oh boy, will it rake you over the coals. I'm
going to have to get this book.
It's really, really good, but very convicting about, one day we have to answer to God about if we fostered that relationship of our spouse with God. And if we made them like put God as the priority over us and point them back to Him. And if we did it for ourselves, or, if our priorities got messed up. And so I think it's powerful, and it's very important for us to facilitate that being priority in our spouse's life, for them to be seeking Christ and spending time.
That's a good point.
And then keeping that priority for us as well, just spending that time and having that relationship so that our marriage is healthy.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more the devil wants is to get your kids and your husband.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Because what an easy target. I mean, he gets your kids, then then that throws you into the worry, the fear, the doubt, the heartache. And if he gets your relationship, then now he's damaged a generational line, which will continue to be damaged. I mean, that is a playground. There's nothing more that the enemy's like, yes, I am the Duke of Distraction, and I'm going to deal with this right here. Give me this. Yeah. And I mean, we just can't hand it over.
No.
If we're going to fight, we need to fight. Not just be like, well, here you go.
Yeah.
I'll try to get it back later. It don't work like that. No. So then it leads us to like friends and social obligations. So even friendships and social obligations can become distractions when we've really focus more on maintaining appearances, attending events, pleasing others, doing those things more than seeking God's will and looking to Him first. And I know that when Jeremy and I, again, he's gonna love this episode. I know that when we were first married, like I had a really, really strong friendship, I had a just close best friend, loved her, I still love her. But because things weren't great with he and I, and she and I had so much in common and we had so much fun together, and that he would often feel like like even my social post way back in the day when I was on social media, it'd be her and her and her and me and her and me and her and you're the best. And oh, you look so pretty. You look so great. I love that outfit. I mean, he probably thought, are you married to me or are you married to her? Like which one of us? But I was seeking validation. I was seeking something.
Oh, yeah.
And so whether it's I throw it in my kids or I throw it in my friends, I guess that's the point. Or if you are the kind of person who throws it in your husband, you know, we have to really get a hold of that and take it to God. Yeah. Because I can't let somebody else define who I am. I have to know who I am through God.
Yeah, absolutely. And perfectionism and people pleasing are two of my biggest struggles. And it sucks because in light of other people, I never measure up. And it wears me down and it makes me beat myself up and I lose my identity. And it just takes a toll on you mentally and emotionally. And then
what a huge distraction because you're too busy trying to figure that out.
You're just investing all this more time and what can I do? And what about this? And how about this? And social media just shows you all these images of what perfection is and what it looks like and what everybody else is going to think is cool. And it's so dangerous. It's
absolutely dangerous. And we don't think about it. Think like, when's the last time you really was looking around at all the relationships, all the good things and you went, oh, you know, man, these are really taking me from God. You don't, because we're caught up in the here and the now. We're caught up in the earthly pleasures. And again, God gave us those things. They're good. Right. But we are to be the rulers over them, not them over us. And I've talked about with Angela in the very first episode that as I was reading and studying all this, and as I continue to podcast the different weeks, that God just keeps reminding me that everything that's above him is an idol. Yeah. It's almost like I feel like God's like, there is nothing else. No. Like you say, this is good. But that was something I gave you. And it's good, but I'm your best thing and I gave you me. Right. And so when I look to others to fulfill emotional or spiritual needs, or I look to social obligations, or I look for another calendar plug-in, I am still searching for something that only God can fully meet. And I really need to look at that and go, no, this is just not life. You know how people will say, well, that's just busy time. We're in a busy world. That's just life. No, that's me making a choice. Yeah. That's me idolizing things. Right. Once again. Yeah. I mean, the Bible, we always want to throw it back to the Bible, right? The Bible says in Luke 14:26, Jesus' call to in this verse is Jesus' call to put him above everything else. And he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife, children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. That's NIV. And before we get all upset about that, let me show you some things about this verse. Number one, Jesus is defining what it means to be a disciple. Mm-hmm. It means to prioritize Jesus above all else and to be willing to sacrifice your life on earth for eternal life. And I think when people hear the word sacrifice, they automatically think about death. But it means sacrifice your pleasures, your desires. It's not talking about death, right? Your wants. Mm-hmm. He's saying, here's all these good things I gave you. However, we need to step in these marching orders and have these things. Right. And so when it says sacrifice your life, no, it doesn't mean like you just came here to die and it's over. Right. We have heaven here on earth. Like we don't have to wait to live eternally. Right. We can live with an eternal perspective and now. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about, a foundation for our kids, teaching them that, because this life is always going to disappoint.
Yeah, it might mean that you're not doing everything you want to do. Yeah. Playing every sport or going to every party or doing activities that are going to put you around people that are not healthy. Yeah. That's the sacrifice.
Yeah, you might actually just have to stay home and play like a board game with your family or talk or have coffee with a friend who's struggling. You know, you might not get to do the glamorous thing. Right. The 42 sports appointments. And
it reminds me though, do you remember the analogy with the jar?
Yes, share it. This was so good.
It showed this big glass jar and they put a bunch of sand in it, and then they put some smaller gravel, and then they put some big rocks, and it didn't all fit. It doesn't all fit in the jar. You can't make it. But you can take the same amount of sand, the same amount of rocks, the same gravel, And if you put the big rocks in first and then the medium-sized gravel and then the sand afterwards, all the things fit in the same jar. All of it fits.
Yeah, same stuff, same materials, nothing different.
It's the same. It's the analogy for our life. If we're having our quiet time and our prayer and devotions with God, and we're putting those first things first and then prioritizing our marriage and our family, all the other stuff will fit.
Yep.
You'll just be so much more effective. You'll have God's blessing on your time and on your relationships, and you'll have that right perspective to put first things first and not do things that you shouldn't. And everything will fit that needs to fit, and you'll have enough time.
Yeah, I love that. I had forgotten about that, so you reminded me. So here's another thing about this verse, because I can already hear somebody out there or somebody on Facebook's going to say, so it says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate their father and mother, so God's telling me to hate them. Okay, let's do some wording here, okay? When the Bible was translated, it's translated into words we understand. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the word hate here in ancient times in different context, it could also mean preference.
Right.
So he was not saying that you should hate your mother, your father, your kids.
Right.
We're not giving you that. You're not getting that out today. No, it was saying that the preference over all of these good things. Mm-hmm. A father is a good thing, a mother, a wife, a children, a brother, a sister, blah, 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 blah. No, the preference should be, but when you have these things, that I am above them.
Yeah.
It's preference. Mm-hmm. So in that, when I put that into like the sentence, I went, do I always have the preference of God first?
No, I wish I did.
No, me too. And so basically here, Jesus is saying that in this particular passage to his disciples, he's saying to the disciples that they should prioritize him mm-hmm. over their family and over their own lives.
Absolutely.
And then you see that modeled beautifully. Mm-hmm. I think, again, it's why I love the show Chosen.
Yeah.
Even though it's not like, spot.
Just makes it so much more real.
Just, yeah, it's so, like, I can relate more because I see these people. I love it. That's just a shameless plug. I'm so sorry.
No, and it's true. Like, you read it and you grow up with those stories and it just becomes kind of, okay, well, you know, we have these ideas, but they were just regular people doing regular life, everyday life.
They
like
were just
we are.
like you and I.
They were not extraordinary or had some superpowers. No. They were just regular guys and pretty bad ones, really.
Some of them.
And the things that they did and accomplished are very attainable for us. We can live that life.
Yep.
We have the Holy Spirit. They didn't even have that then. They had Jesus in person, but he told us that the Holy Spirit's better than having Jesus there in person if we just tap into it. So,
yeah, that's so good. So now that we've identified how the relationships and responsibilities that we cherish can unintentionally distract us, it's important to understand why this even matters, mm-hmm. right? Because a lot of people are like, blah, 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 you're just telling me how to reschedule my life, okay? So these distractions don't just pull us away from God. They also impact the way we experience his presence mm-hmm. and his purpose in our lives.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a closer look at how these relational distractions can affect our spiritual walk and the balance that God really desires for us. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about like why relational distractions are harmful. And I feel like I've already beat the horse on the whole calendar, but I did want to share this with you really quick. It's in the book, Distracted by Sherman Burkhead. And I'm just going to share two things that I think are really good. He says, I have heard so many people say to me, I don't have time to read the Bible. I don't have time to pray. I don't have time for discipleship. I'm just too busy with work or with the kids. And he says, blank, you fill it in. So he's saying sports, activities, whatever, mm-hmm. right? And he's saying that's not an excuse.
Right. No.
It's not an excuse. Like the most important relationship that should always have time to be made for it is with God.
Yeah.
Like you can't afford not to have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
At all. And so then a couple of pages later, he addresses more of like kids and hustling. And so he says, school and homework, although important, because we want to make sure everybody's doing their homework, they are also distractions if they keep you from spending time in the Word. Sports and practice build character and discipline, but can also take precedence over going to church. Thousands of families will invest almost every extra hour in getting their children to practice and spend every weekend at the motocross track, the baseball, softball field, etc., with a sincere desire to invest in their children, only to teach them that their distractions are more important than their God. Mm-hmm. And that's the point, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's when a distraction becomes harmful. Mm-hmm. When we as parents accidentally teach our kids, and which is this point right here we're going to go to, shifting their focus. When we shift our focus. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the most significant dangers of relational distractions, is either me shifting my focus or me being a part of my kids or my friends, my relationships shifting their focus. Because it's so easy to get divided in these things.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is like second nature. Like it's as easy as breathing. Mm-hmm. For me to sit at this podcast and do all this and then walk out and catch myself. It's so natural that it's sad. And as we pour ourselves into these relationships and commitments, we just unintentionally neglect our foundational relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to even say and then sit here and think about how some of the examples of how I do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough. So Amy, why don't we go to, why is this critical? Why is a shift of focus critical? Because if I just say, hey, this is a problem, but it's critical and I believe it's crucial.
We lose ground. I mean, we're always in the process of maturing and growing closer to God and, living out the Great Commission and reaching others for Christ and sharing that. But it just takes us away from that mission and that goal. And, gosh.
It makes me think about the fact that you work in mental health right now. Mm-hmm. And I know that daily, hourly, you see person after person after person come in who mm-hmm. is fighting to regain ground.
Yeah.
In some sort of way, whether it's relational or it could be addiction. I'm not saying everybody that comes there is coming for that. But I think that when we lose, it's critical because when we lose that shift of focus, mm-hmm. we do lose our grounding. God is our cornerstone. He is where we sink our feet. And when we sink our feet in the world, the stress of that, the burden of that, it crushes us.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've been there myself. I struggle with depression and anxiety. And that's a result of picking up stuff that I wasn't meant to be holding to begin with. I'm taking things that belong to God away from God and like, I've got this.
And how does that work, Amy? Does it work out well?
I'll take care of it on my own, and then I'll hit up God if I get in a bind. Yep. And that's so wrong. And it's just, you have to take a step back and I do my part. He does his part every time. The other person has to do their part.
Yep. We were created to be in communion with him, not to be in a distraction mode where instead of my head being filled of heavenly realms and things, it's with earthly worry, fear, doubt, expectations, distractions. Right. I mean, you want to talk about the fastest way to get disconnected from God is to get disconnected from God.
If we're not connected with him, we don't hear his voice. Mm-mm. We don't see him working in our lives. We don't see him working in our relationships. We get super stressed out, and we don't deal with it in healthy coping ways. We deal with it in unhealthy ways generally because they're much easier. It's much easier to get on and scroll your phone and check out. It's much easier to go have a few drinks and forget about your problems. It's much harder to deal in a healthy way and rely on and trust God and only listen to his voice and allow him to lead, and causes us a lot of mental anguish that we don't need to have to start with if we would just keep it first things first.
I was looking in the Bible at different stories or verses, right, to try to tie this into, and I came across Matthew 13:22, which was one of my favorite stories. I honestly didn't understand it as well, I think, in years past as I do now. I see it completely different. But Jesus is talking in 13:22 in Matthew about the seed being thrown in the thorns, right? Mm-hmm. And that story represents who hears God's word, people who hear God's word, and then people who hear it and they do well with it, people who it gets choked out. And it made me think about how life worries and like deceit the devil's deceit, how he chokes stuff out. I'm talking even Christians, right? Like it's not like because I'm a Christian, I have this shield around me that says that it's going to be great and beautiful and devil's not going to touch me or mess with me. No, I have like a target on the back, I believe the front. And so it made me think about how the worries of life can choke out my ability to be a seed that has growth, right? And so just as the thorns in this parable choke out the growth of the seed, relational distractions, no matter where they come from, can choke out the spiritual growth in our lives. And I was thinking about the constant demand of being a mother, right? My kids always need something. My husband always needs something. I have friends. I have communities. I have Bible study. And it's all the pools of all the different places, right? And then as a result, I start to feel dry, spiritually dry sometimes, and disconnected and distant from God. And then I have to go back and do what you said. I have to go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, have I overscheduled? Did I prioritize things too much over this quiet time? I almost did this at Christmas. At Christmas, we have this, we've had in the past this like cookie exchange, and it's so much fun because all of our neighbors will get together, and we don't get to do that very often, and they love it, and they'll start asking about it. And sure enough, somebody did, and I really wanted to do it, but I was so weighted down with so many other things, and I just wanted to cram one more thing in. And I could feel the Holy Spirit. Like I was like, Lord, can I do this? Can I pull this off? I really want to. Like, I know I can. I know I can, Lord. If I just do this and I shift this. But the Holy Spirit kept pressing on me. No. And it was hard to send out a text that said, due to my schedule and the things that, like I had a priority this year at Christmas to actually be present. And I was filling my calendar one more time with something that took me away from my goal of being present. And so I did. I had to send a text out. It was just like, I can't. I'm sorry, guys. I cannot. And in this book, he talks about that, about having spaces in your calendar that are just no's.
Yeah.
And then blaming it on your calendar. Well, my calendar says it's a no.
Yeah.
And then sticking to it.
Yeah.
And I did that. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard and I didn't like it. But on the back of it, it was good. And I was present for Christmas, and I didn't throw one more thing. And I didn't let the devil steal anything away from me by me trying to press through.
Right.
And so I found it important not to be so busy that I was distracted on what was most important. And for the Christmas time, what it was reminding my kids and my family and myself about why we celebrate Christmas.
Right. And even though I know, and we talked about how good things can become that distraction. And for me in the last year, I've learned this because I didn't say no. I didn't leave space, which leads to burnout, which we're coming up on.
Yep. So yeah, share with us. You definitely have. I think we could just let you take burnout and tell your experience, and we would relate to it.
Right. I mean, partly it's my personality, partly it's because I have ADHD, but I am really good at a lot of things, and I will get a new interest and I just hyperfixate it and I become an expert immediately and I shoot to the top, and I do this repeatedly wherever I work. I get in, I'm obsessed, I love it, I get promoted, I move up, which is what I want. And then my priorities get messed up and it becomes too much. And I did that in ministry, and I was spending so much time and energy, and at home. Ministry is a very different animal.
Yes,
if you do it vocationally, there's just, you're never off. You're never off. You have volunteers, you have people in your ministry, you have coworkers, whatever it is, constantly, and your family attends there and your friends, and everything's mixed up, and it's just a 24/7 thing. And I was just drowning. And God just was like, you have to step away. You have to step away, because I was doing ministry. I was doing the right thing, and I loved it, and I loved where I was. I loved what I did, but my priorities got messed up, and my home was getting neglected, and my kids were getting neglected, and my husband was getting neglected, and I was miserable because those are the things that are important to me, and I wasn't able to do what I know I needed to do with them, or have the time and the space. And it wasn't a good, situation for me.
So then I guess you could say even in a relational aspect, self-care is relational to myself.
Oh, yeah. And my therapist had to teach me about self-care a lot. I didn't even know she was like, what do you do for that? And I was like, I got my nails done last week. And she's like, okay. I'm like, I took a nap the other day. And she's like, do you do that regularly? And I'm like, no. And she's like, then that's not self-care, that's survival.
That's good.
And so having to learn, I didn't even know what that was, and I didn't do it. And so learning how to have that space and take care of myself and keep my priorities. And that was a good thing, but it wasn't right for me. It wasn't, and I think it was for a season, but being obedient to God and stepping back, and just creating more space, working less hours, and reprioritizing. My family is so much better now. My marriage, I have time. I can still clean house and cook dinner because I don't work as many hours.
But again, because you were obedient, right? You put God first. And I was in that season of your life, and that wasn't easy.
No.
But you listened and you were obedient, and you had to make some hard choices.
Oh, yeah.
But putting him at the top, a lot of things started, like the rocks,
right.
They all started fitting back in the container again.
Yeah.
And then you seemed to be much more happier. And I think in your life, like God started revealing things to help you start chipping away.
Yeah. Well, and it becomes a pride issue too, even if it's something ministry related, like, oh no, I'm going to make this great and I'm going to do a good job and it's going to be successful. God doesn't need me to do that.
Yeah.
He can use you to do that if he wants to, but it doesn't depend on you. He's going to do what he's going to do.
I feel the same way with pride with their stuff too, as far as kids to friendships. Like we can get caught up in the fact that, we're not taking our kids to as many things as other people. And our kids are missing out because we're making choices. That's pride. Yeah. That's totally pride.
Well, and mom shaming is a thing too, which...
That's all.
That could be a whole episode, but
that's right. Family parenting shame is a thing. I think.
Listening to the wrong voice.
Amen. So now that we've covered some of these relational distractions, whether it's again family, friends, community, and how they can cloud our focus on God, the question is, what do we do with this realization? Because it's one thing for us to sit here and tell you what the distraction is. It's another for us to tell you why it's so important that we work through this and give examples of real life issues that we struggle with. But then if we leave you there, then I don't feel like we've left you with anything to be able to walk away and go,
Right.
Remember that song said, things that make you go,
Yeah.
That shows how old I am.
Yeah.
So how do we honor the good gifts of family and community while ensuring that they don't take God's place in our hearts? So let's spend our last time together exploring how we can begin to shift these priorities and invite God into every aspect of our lives.
Right.
So this is starting off with like reprioritizing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said a minute ago, God spoke to you directly. You knew what you needed to do. And he was like, it's time to clean house.
Yeah.
We got to change some things.
And then I kicked my feet and slammed my fist a few times.
Amy, you did that. I don't know how we can be friends. I never do things like that.
But
I do the same thing. Listen, I do it over and over again. And sometimes I feel like God's in heaven looking down at me. I'm like, oh, very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing this again. Mm-hmm. She's doing it again. And yeah, I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better.
Yeah.
It's okay. So here's practical steps, right? So the first one, set boundaries to protect your time with God. Like establish a routine. Mm-hmm. Find something that works for you. I think that a lot of people think, Christian and non-Christian, that if you're not spending like an hour and a half a day in the Word, then you're not spending time with God.
I mean, that would be great, but
yeah.
Start where you're at.
Exactly.
Don't set an unattainable goal that you're not going to meet. Yeah. Be compassionate with yourself about where you are and do what you can do. If it's 5 minutes, then it's 5 minutes.
And I was telling Amy, and I've mentioned this on other ones. I mean, I think the Bible app is the most easiest go-to. Mm-hmm. There's a 4 to 5 minute every day, every morning, right? Past that is an app called First 15. Leah Dyer turned me on to this. It's 15 minutes. It goes through a devotion, an application. It plays a video or a song, and it has a prayer. And you can skip these if you have time. But like, I think about in the morning, what do I waste 15 minutes on in the morning?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
So is initially waking up 15 minutes earlier in my day going to be that harmful or that helpful? Well, I have been steadily doing my quiet time now. It's a miracle. And I cannot even begin to tell you how my days have changed.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, I started off with the 5 minute. I now get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and have my quiet time till 6. Now, please understand, I'm not telling you that's what you should do. It developed into that.
And I tell people that all the time too, because I am not a morning person.
No, God, me either.
I hate mornings.
He knows I'm not.
Don't talk to me. I set my alarm 40 minutes early so I can lay in bed for 40 minutes.
I'm not either. So it's a sacrifice.
And it took me until I was almost 40 years old to figure out like what they're saying is true. You need to do it in the morning. You just have to get that time in, and it totally changes your mindset for the rest of the day.
It does.
And just like with anything, you get out what you put in. And if you want to see growth, it's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you sleep. It's going to cost you less time on your phone.
So my friend, way back when, if you were here with us from the beginning, Tanya Simmons, I used to, she gets up, like God wakes her up at like 3:30 in the morning. And that hasn't always been that way, but she developed into that, and she would have her quiet time to like 6 or 7. And I remember over years looking at her and being like, you do what? And she's like, I can't, you don't understand. If I don't, I am a different person. And I thought, this is no joke. I thought, how in the world do you get up that early and spend that much time? Well, when I started ministry, and then God started developing, and then I started Baylor. It's amazing. It is amazing that some mornings I feel like it's not enough. Like I feel like if I could just have 1 more hour, if I could just have like, just anything, give it to me. I'm looking, I'm searching, and the day goes great. And then there are mornings absolutely where I oversleep, or kids are sick and puking in the night and I don't get to it. And y'all, I'm grumpy and grouchy and quick-witted with my tongue. And I'm like, oof.
Yeah, and Pastor Keith said that in a sermon today. It's creating new thought patterns and processes in your brain. And if you don't do it, then it seems really inconvenient and hard. And maybe you don't understand the Bible that much, but you get up and do it for 5 minutes every day anyways, with the faith of knowing that you're going to grow and it's going to get easier, like working out. So
absolutely. Saying no. B, here we go. Saying no to unnecessary obligations that take you away from God's priorities. Let's be honest. If we looked at our calendars, there's a lot of stuff in there. There is a lot of stuff that you could say no to.
Yeah.
It might not be that you want to, but you could.
Yeah.
So we have to do that. And then C is include God in every decision. And as cliche as it's going to sound, I know a lot of people out there may be like, oh gosh, pray about commitments before saying yes. Amy brought up that great task of having a family goal, inviting your family into this, right? And sitting down as a family and looking at the calendar and saying, over this year, what is our mission and goals? And Amy gave me a great example. She was like, so if your kid comes in and says, I want to take up ice skating lessons, and you're like, cool, let's get the family goal. Does it fit? What are we taking away? And if it doesn't, just like a business, if it doesn't, then we can't do it.
Yeah.
If I'm a business that sells widgets and then I all of a sudden bring a hamburger to the table, I would hope I'd have a board to go, we don't specialize in hamburgers.
Yeah.
We specialize in widgets. And so we're going to have to say that might be great and it could be successful, but right now we don't see where it fits in our goals of this year.
Yeah. And there are times I sit on the board. There's been times that things have come to the table that are good things and they sound like a good things. Do we want to give to this? And we're like, wait, how is that forwarding our mission? Yeah. And we have to say no. Yeah. And it's okay to do that.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, Satan wants nothing more than to prowl around, roaring and vengefully looking for your kids and your relationships. I found an article from No Doubt About It is the title of it. And it's from Sherry Dew. And she has this long list of these different distractions, right? And then as I was reading it, number 15 stuck out to me, and this is what it says. Lucifer would have us so busy with the details swirling around family, friends, and every soccer league in town that there's no time to actually live the gospel. No time to fast, no time to pray, no time to immerse ourselves in scriptures, no time to worship in the temple. All of the things we need to do to study for our moral test. So in other words, Satan wants us to be a little more concerned with the world than with the gospel. A little more interested in life today than life forever. Regret is what happens when we figure out too late what was really important.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, that hit me pretty hard. Yeah. And that led me to the thought of, if that's the case, if that's true, and I'm putting my eggs in that basket, but not everybody does. But let's just pretend we did. Then how more crucial is it for me to model to my kid that God is most important when I know for a fact that there's someone out there trying their hardest, throwing everything they can, all the things my kids want, all the things that my friends desire, all the things my husband has struggled in his past, they're coming full-fledged at them. And if I'm not modeling, if I am not picking up my cross daily, then what is going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, you shared your unpopular opinion earlier, and I'll share mine, but your kids should know that they're third fiddle.
That's good.
Mine do. I guarantee if you go ask any of them, what's first, what's second, what's third, that they would say God, Dad, us. And it's, what service are you doing if you tell your kid yes all the time and they think they're the center of the world and everybody bows down to them? They're going to have a real rude awakening one day when they have to pay for things on their own and make things fit. And you're not helping them.
No.
It's not realistic for them to get whatever they want. And I know that I've fallen victim to that. And I want to give them everything and I want to say yes to everything. But they're real people and they have to learn how to walk this out for themselves someday. And we're not doing them any favors.
Yeah. And it's really important, like, who's going to model it if you're not? And if you're not and another believer's not, I'm a little afraid of what the other option is.
Yeah. I mean, they need to be willing to have their life be a sacrifice someday and to serve others, not just be looking out for themselves. So.
Yeah, and so that moves us to God's invitation to rest and refocus. And I have a whole bunch of notes here, but as we're doing this, I have one thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn it to Amy because I just keep hearing this thought in my head. So again, it makes me think about seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, right? And all these things will be given to you. And so that's, resting in him in his way. But what I keep hearing for the refocus is Sabbath. Yeah. And we talked about that. And we were talking about, we definitely wanted to include that. And I think this is a great space because as we're winding down, there's no better way to rest and refocus than to remember what Sabbath is. So I'm going to let you take it away on Sabbath.
Yeah, that verse is one of my favorites. And if you look at it and what it's saying rest, but rest in the Lord is not taking a nap. Rest in the Lord is spending time with him and in his word. And that's where real rest comes from. True rest, true restoration and refreshment comes from time with him and his word. It fills us up. It wakes us up. It gives us life. And so it's pointing us to that time with him and putting him first. But a Sabbath is tremendously important for all of us. Having a day set aside. It doesn't have to be Sunday, but Sunday is great. It's a command in the Bible. We need to have a Sabbath day. Mark 2:27, I thought that I looked up some verses that talked about the Sabbath, and this one was definitely my favorite. But it says, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
That's good.
Like, it's a gift from God, and he needed it. And he set the example for everything that we're supposed to do. Jesus did it. They talked about it a lot throughout the Old and New Testament. It's not an Old Testament commandment. It's new. It's something Jesus did and we need to do as well, is just to have a day of rest, a day to spend time with him, focus on him, not be busy and caught up. And I know that's hard to do, but you would be amazed at the changes that you would see in your mental health and in your family life if you just had that day.
And it's hard. You have to be intentional.
You do.
I tried this last year, and I was going to do it on Saturdays, and I got through about 5 or 6 Saturdays before it went out the window.
Yeah.
And asked me if I've restarted again.
Right. I mean,
working on it, y'all. I'm working on it.
And it's difficult. And I'm not going to say that we do it perfectly every week, because we don't. And it changes days. Sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's Sunday. It just depends. But we do try to rest. I mean, we're not unplugging all of our appliances and not cooking dinner.
Right.
But just having quiet time and time at home and not leave. I love it if I could have a day just not leave my house at all.
This rest and refocus that God invites us into allows us to shed the weight of striving, the pressure of perfection, and the stress of imbalance. So instead, we're able to embrace the rhythm. I think that's what Sabbath and what I'm hearing you say is there's a rhythm of that day that's a slower pattern, living with purpose in that day, having that peace. It's very intentional in that day. And I think we can spread that out into other days in small segments, because as we seek God's kingdom first, we gain clarity to love others, invest in our families, and build community, all while our eyes are completely fixed on Him. So it's not that God's taking things away from us, or that living a Christian life is, you have to do without. No, it is actually plentiful because we put Him at the top, and then we work through the will He has for us.
And then we have something, we're filled up, so we have something to pour out to others.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And so, I would just say again, you said a routine, a ritual, it's a habit, it's consistent. You're going to church on Sunday, you're getting filled up. You're going to small group throughout the week. You're going to Wednesday nights, you're going to Bible study, you're doing your daily devotions, and you're having a Sabbath, and it's constantly like a little bit that you're keeping filled up, you're keeping fueled up. You're never getting to empty to that place.
So I want to share what I read in an article, this perspective. It's pretty powerful, in my opinion. Some people might not say it is, but I was reading this article. It's called Our Relationship with God and Our Family, and it's by Kyle Pope. And he says in the article that relationship to God's like marriage, right? It's a covenant. And in James 4:4, unfaithfulness to God is compared to adultery. And I think that's what got my attention, because adultery in our culture it's there. It's serious, right? And it says this powerful imagery reminds us of the depth of commitment that we are called to have with the Lord. Just as in marriage, where we vow to forsake all others for our spouse, our love for God requires a similar devotion. No one and nothing else should be greater than our commitment to Him. If we say we love God with all our heart and all our mind and all our soul and all our strength, which is what we have in Mark 12:30, we must ask ourselves, are we truly living this out by prioritizing Him above everything else, including our closest relationships and our most cherished calendar events? And then he goes on to use this great analogy. And it says, think of the example of being in an airplane. So when the flight attendants get up and they do their whole buckle your seatbelt and if the thing, right? So it says, okay, if the cabin loses pressure, you're instructed to put on your oxygen mask first before helping others. And I know I've struggled with that as a mother, thinking that if I was in a plane and my babies, motherly instinct would be to take care of them, right? But they say that. They say, do yours first.
Yeah, and if you're unconscious, how are you going to put it on your kid?
Exactly. This is not selfishness that I'm going to take care of me first, but it is the best way to ensure my own safety, and then for me to effectively help others, like my children or whoever's sitting next to me that I could help. So it says, similarly, I'm not going to be able to say the word. Similarly. See, I can't do it.
Similarly.
I can't do it. I don't have to come with another word. So when we prioritize our relationship with God, we're better equipped to love and guide our families spiritually.
Yeah.
So if we focus on our own relationship with God, if I pull that mask down, if I get the oxygen I need, then I can serve and influence my loved ones, my friends, my community, in the most meaningful way.
Yeah, that's really good.
I loved that.
Yeah.
That really, because that's something I could close my eyes and envision.
Yeah.
And I know the importance of that on an airplane.
Yeah. And it also makes me think, because I've heard, marriage has such a messed up view in our culture today. But love in a marriage, it's not a feeling.
No.
I don't feel
Not every day.
lovey and happy every day. It's a choice.
Yeah.
You choose love. You choose your partner every day.
And I really had to learn that. And because I kind of sat in that boat for a long time and caused a lot of damage and had a lot of damage caused on me. A lot of failed relationship. I'm talking destruction at its best. If anybody knows my story, like I'm flat out destruction. But that was because I was in that culture and that thought of love, love, love. And yes, love is great and we're commanded to love. But again, if I don't love myself, if I don't know who I am in my God who loves me, then how can I be anything or love anyone else? I can't.
No.
I can't. But what I can do is fill myself with endless desires, thing after thing after thing after distraction that just makes me forget or numbs the pain enough to where I can just go through the day and it's okay. It's enough.
Yeah.
Because that's where we land. That's where a lot of us, your neighbors, your friends, that's where they land. You can look at social media all you want to. All you're seeing is a trumped up version of people searching for something else.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's just how it is. So, okay, we have a refocus challenge this week. And so here it is. This is the refocus challenge. I want you to take a moment in the coming weeks to reflect on your current priorities. So ask yourself, where does your relationship with God fall on your priority list? And are there any relationships or responsibilities or maybe even calendar events that you've allowed to take over your commitment to your time with God? So we were talking about a focused rhythm, right? So here's a way in the coming week to focus on creating a better rhythm for your day that puts God in the center. So you've probably heard this every episode. I'm so sorry. It's just the broken record, but it is the most important. Number one is prioritize your prayer and your Bible study. Begin and end your day with God, even if it's for 4 minutes. 4 minutes, start there and see what God does with it. That is a must. Okay, so this week, prioritize that time. And I would say get a journal and write down every day.
Yeah.
Number two, evaluate your commitments. Are your responsibilities aligned with God's purpose for your life? That goes back to that family goal, that family mission statement and family goals. What are yours? What are yours individually? What are yours as a family?
And it's really, if you need help identifying what you're prioritizing, look at your thoughts. What were you thinking about in the last week? Look at your finances. Where did you spend all your money?
That's so good.
Look at your emotions. What was getting you upset or sad or excited or...
Oh, tell them about the ask a friend, phone a friend.
And then if you're really brave, ask 2 people that are going to be real honest with you. Or if you have teenagers, you can ask your kids because they will be honest.
Talk about getting your feelings hurt.
Ask them, just completely no context. Just say, what do I love the most? What 2 things do I love the most? And see what they tell you.
And be ready for that.
Yeah.
Amy may have experienced this.
I did ask.
But that's so good. If you can't evaluate your own commitments, if you're like blinded to that, ask somebody else what they think your commitments are, because they're not blinded to it and they sure won't mind sharing it with you.
Yeah.
And write it down and then pray on that. Ask God to reveal that to you.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
And
so good.
I asked my husband, tell me the things that you think I love the most and don't give me the right answer. Give me the truth answer. And he did.
Amy's currently working on those today.
Yeah.
And then third is love your family through Christ. So be intentional in the coming weeks to guide your family spiritually so that they're growing spiritually. Show that you love them best by loving God first. And I think by doing this, you're not only deepening your relationship with God, but you are equipping yourself to love others with a love that is full and enduring and rooted in Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how you can lose with this.
No, I think you're 100% right. If we want to have any healthy relationships with anyone, spouse, kids, friends, neighbors, anyone, we have to have a healthy relationship with Christ, or it'll never be what it should be, what God intended it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so as we're wrapping up, let's do a few takeaways here. Let's just recap. Number one, relational distractions can shift our focus. Family, friends, and social commitments can draw our attention away from God if we are not intentional. Number two, balance is key. While relationships are important, they must serve God's purpose and not overshadow a relationship with Him. Refocus on God. So prioritize prayer, Bible study, and serving God to avoid that spiritual dryness and burnout. And then fourth, loving God above all else. Our commitment to God should come first. Mm-hmm. First in the tithing, as we said, seek ye the kingdom first. We've got to put God back in His rightful place and get all those idols wiped out of that top spot.
Yeah, for sure.
It's absolutely important to a relationship, but it's just important to life overall.
Yeah, it is.
And then, of course, you have a challenge this week. So we want you to pray about that as you evaluate your priorities and you realign your focus with God, and you love your family in a way that fosters and creates spiritual growth. Anything else you can think of, Amy?
I mean, just be compassionate with yourself. Don't walk away from this and be like, I'm failing everything.
We're all failing everything.
Just start where you are and take baby steps. God doesn't expect perfection. He just wants you to be trying and growing and just take little steps forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Your biggest cheerleader is God.
Yeah.
He wants you to be close. And when you start to draw near to Him, even if it's for a second, He's going to draw near to you. And that's what I love about Him. Mm-hmm. He's faithful, and He'll be faithful in any step. Even if you say, I can only do one of those things, He's going to be faithful to meet you in that. Mm-hmm. And that's really the whole goal of this season, is just to give you some practical things to think about and practical tools so that you can step forward in your relationship with Christ. All right, Amy, well, I think that's our time. Thank you so much for coming today and being a repeat offender. I appreciate it. And guys, thank you for joining us again this week. We hope to see you on our next episode of Southern Soul Chats in this series, Driven to Distraction. Bye, y'all. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, as we've discussed, refocusing our priorities on God is essential for maintaining balance in our relationships. I encourage you to take the Refocus Challenge and start shifting your attention to what truly matters, putting God first. In today's episode, if today's episode resonated with you, we encourage you to share, follow, like, and subscribe on all your favorite platforms. By doing so, you're helping us equip others to step forward in their relationship with Christ. And be sure to connect with us on social media. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook for updates, encouragements, and more. Don't forget to come back in 2 weeks as we continue to take a closer look at the distractions in our lives. If this podcast has touched your heart and you'd like to see this work continue, please consider supporting Stepping Forward Ministries through a donation on our website or through the given link on the resource page. Your generosity helps us bless others and grow this mission. Thank you for being with us. See you next time. Bye, y'all.